This story was submitted by Hikiro Moto. This is about my friend Dorothy. The very start of this story takes place in October 2010, when I was 17. My sister was, and still is, an Irish dancer, and she was at a competition in Calgary. I got to go along with them, since I had a long weekend off from school. It was fun exploring downtown Calgary, but most importantly, I got to become friends with my mother's friend, Dorothy Woods. Dorothy had a daughter in the same Irish dancing class as my sister, and she immediately liked me, since I was naturally brash and bold, like her. I vividly remember her hanging out with my mother and I when my mom and I were arguing if I could go down to Chinatown and explore. My mother said, "You can't go, because there will be drug dealers and crazy people." Dorothy added, No, the drug dealers are on Yonge Street. The prostitutes are in Chinatown." And my mother laughed right at me. But I didn't feel too mad, because Dorothy was there, and it was pretty funny to me. I'm really sad that I can't remember a lot of the stuff that she and I talked about, but I do remember having a very good time as we all waited for the dance practice to finish. I only got to see Dorothy when I went along to my sister's dance practices, and usually I only went along for a ride to go somewhere else. I was 17 or 18, and I wasn't really interested in hanging out with a bunch of women in their 40s, but if I were stuck there, I'd always sit with Dorothy, or at least try to. She'd tell us about her work running a daycare, her daughters, and about her escapades in roller derby. Her derby nickname was Cheap Shot Dot. Roller girls are super tough women. They're all pretty tall and bulky, since the sport is kinda dangerous, and Dorothy definitely looked the part. She basically was a big tough mama bear type. She made you feel safe just being around her. That was what made the events in late 2011 so baffling. On November 11th, 2011, Dorothy was last seen at her family's house when she came to watch movies with her daughters. At some point in the night, she left. The next day, the daycare she worked at was locked shut, with a notice on the front door written by her husband. It basically told them that Dorothy had up and left the city and she couldn't be reached. Of course, this was completely unbelievable. She would have given plenty of notice that she was going to leave town, and she loved working with the kids at the daycare. Something was clearly and horribly wrong with this situation. It wasn't until the 13th that Dorothy's husband had a missing persons report filed, at the urging of her brother. Everybody started to notice how odd her husband David was acting. The police said he seemed depressed, but really passive about his wife going missing. My hometown is by no means small, but right away the city seemed to be full of people trying to figure out where Dorothy was. She was a major figure in the city roller derby, and she had plenty of friends from working with the Irish dancers and daycare clients. One Irish dancer's husband said his coworkers were speculating that Dorothy had run off with another man, and the roller derby women were thinking that she was going on a solitary road trip. But the thing was, why would she leave her daughters? It was known that David and Dorothy weren't getting along in their marriage, but not to what degree. Her kids were being protected by the police at this point, and of course, nobody wanted to harass children for answers. One night there was a news report on the search for Dorothy, and I was telling my mother something along the lines of, "She's a really tough person. There's no way she could be in danger," which seemed to put my mother at ease. I do remember looking at my father and seeing his face. He was an avid Dateline real-life mysteries watcher, and during the missing woman stories, he'd always retort, "Oh, come on! The husband did it! The husband always does it!" The look on his face was a mix of gratefulness that I was trying to protect my mother, and of the thought that both of us had. The husband always did it. Christmas 2011 came and went. The missing person posters were all over town, and half the city had her on their minds. My mother and sister figured Dorothy would at least come back down for Christmas to see her daughters. After that came and went, they figured that New Year's would be the day. I remember January 4th, 2012 vividly. I didn't have to work that day, so I went downtown and bought some print CDs from a pawn shop. Everything seemed really low-key and positive, until I got home, opened Facebook, and saw the news column. Dorothy's body had been found in the Blackstrap Lake area. She had been strangled to death, and her body abandoned in a drainage ditch. I immediately told my siblings, and my sister called her friends. I tried to call my mother, but she already knew. The search was finally over, and now an uglier story was unraveling. I felt so numb that I couldn't even cry. David was now in custody. The police had previously installed a tracking device on the bottom of his car and had noticed an extremely odd trip he'd taken. On January 2nd, the police reported finding an unrelated corpse outside the city. A paranoid David had driven several kilometers south of the city and then simply turned around. That was how the police found her body. David had just driven out to see if Dorothy's body was still where he left it. The ensuing investigation and trial is a testament to how slow and sloppy my country's justice system is. The court was delayed for almost 2 years due to having too many other cases in progress, and during this time, David's story about Dorothy's disappearance kept changing. Dorothy had been strangled with nylon rope and wrapped in polywrap. An empty tube of polywrap and a matching type of nylon rope had been found in David's garage. He denied ever having those in his garage, and allegedly blamed his kids for bringing them in for supplies in a school project. Then, David claimed that he had driven out to find Dorothy when she left a mysterious note on his truck windshield. Then he claimed that the police had taken the note and lost it. A breakthrough into what happened and why finally came when Dorothy's text message history was leaked. David and Dorothy had been viciously fighting in late 2011, so Dorothy had taken up to having 2 affairs. One with a man she had met at a bar, and another was a South African guy from the next city over. David had listened in on her, and texted her the really creepy, "Guess I'm the wrong color for you. Goodbye." He then told his daughters that Dorothy was cheating on him in the hopes of turning them against her. He also told the police that Dorothy was out driving drunk and made his kids go out driving around for her the whole time Dorothy was seeing the second guy. She eventually returned home the next day to watch movies with her daughters, and as I said before, sometime during the night, she disappeared from the house, and then the whole city. It took 2 years, but on May 15, 2014, David was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. I don't know where Dorothy's daughters are now, and I don't want to know. I just want them to grow up in peace. Sometimes I'll be at the supermarket or the mall, and I'll see a big blonde woman, and I'll get a fleeting feeling that it's Dorothy, but it never is, of course. I'm now 22, and I feel so much regret that I couldn't get to know Dorothy more during the time she was alive, or that we could have safely gotten her away from her house on November 11th. As time goes by, my memories of her get more and more hazy, and I just don't want that to happen. I'm telling her story in hopes that people will know her for more than being just a victim name. Dorothy shouldn't have been cheating as an escape from her abusive husband, but by all means she should not have been murdered for it. If you're in a dangerous home situation, get out of there. If you feel threatened by anyone, get help. Just make things official and break away from the people who are unhinged enough to casually kill you. The truth can be horrible to tell or hear sometimes, but I'd always rather hear a hard truth from a friend than hear that a friend is gone forever. And if you're ever angry with someone you know or love, be rational. Think of your family and friends. Don't do something that could hurt everyone you know for decades to come. If you would like to read more into the story, or see the text messages between Dorothy and David, make sure you check the description for all the links. If you found this video interesting, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description on information on how to submit your stories. I would really like to thank you, Hikiromoto, for writing this out and sharing it with us. This kind of incident actually happens a lot more than people think. A good example of that would be a coworker of my wife's. Back a few years ago when we lived in Oregon, there was an older lady named Glenda Campbell. She was a really sweet lady and she was one of the greeters at Walmart, and then one day she just went missing. She had also left without her cell phone, wallet, or anything like that. No one still knows where she's at, and it's been like 4 years. As bad as it is to say it, at least you and the family got some closure. A lot of people never end up finding out what happened to their loved ones. So I've been noticing a lot of people in the comments asking if the contest was over. I wanted to give you a quick hint. I released a video last week, and at the end of the video, I addressed what's going on with the contest. So if you're not sure what's happening, you might want to check some of my videos last week and see if you missed one. Just a quick heads up. I hope you all had a fun and safe holiday, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.